Hello, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. Awesome. We've got some great folks jumping in. We'll start in another minute or two. So grab your tea, run to the restroom. We'll be together for about an hour. All right, we'll give it just another minute. All right, it's 11:01 in Bozeman, Montana, folks. I say we get started. This is being recorded, so you can always come back and reference it in the future if you'd like. Hello, hello, I'm Maddy Roche. I'm XYPN's Director of Member Services, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you to this webinar. We have loved hosting these webinars every month. Pretty much for all of XYPN history. But just recently we changed the time slot to midday, and we've started to have some of our own team of experts on these calls to be able to facilitate some Q&A and presentation around the topics that matter most to you. As you know, Emily Purdon is an XYPN teammate, and she, I must say, is one of our most complimented XYPN teammates. She is somewhat new to the team. She's been with us for about a year. Emily, I'll let you introduce yourself once you get going, but I do want to lay some groundwork for today's presentation that Emily's real specialty is on that process side of the financial planning experience. XYPN has really enjoyed having her on the team and her expertise to help our members build that process from the initial engagement all the way through the relationship. Today, Emily is going to talk about building the initial financial planning process, some of her tips and tricks, some of her pro tips, and most importantly, we're going to facilitate at the last half of this call some Q&A. And per usual, all of you watchers and viewers submitted some awesome questions ahead of time. So Emily and I have a really good gauge of what we're going to talk about during that Q&A, but I really invite more questions through the question and answer component of Zoom. So please be sure that as Emily's talking, that you drop those questions in, because I will be reviewing them and we'll be dropping them into the Q&A portion after this call. Also, I want to remind all of you that next month we will be back here, and we're going to be talking about launching a marketing plan for your RIA with Emily Purdon's colleague, Carolyn Dalimole. She's our marketing coach. So next month, you're going to have a presentation really chock full of all of that great marketing information about how to launch your firm. Of course, submit questions in the Q&A component. And then at the end of this presentation, we are going to circulate a survey, because we really take those seriously in terms of understanding, are we hitting on the topics that matter most to you? Are we delivering it in the manner that makes most sense to you? And of course, are you enjoying them? So without further ado, I'm going to go off camera and give the mic to Miss Emily Purdon. Go for it, Emily.
Thanks so much, Maddy. I see 2 questions in the Q&A so far. Josh, yes, this will be recorded for later viewing. Kelly can probably drop some information. Maddy just hinted at it. It will be available. As far as slides being available, I don't usually provide my slides for download. You can totally take screenshots, so feel free to do that. And if there's truly a slide that you feel would be helpful for you, I'm sure that I could coordinate that effort. Go Hokies! What a great way to start the presentation. Thank you for that. Yeah, class of 2019. Happy to have you. So with that, my presentation on building your initial financial planning process is about 25 minutes. Please add your questions to the Q&A box as you think of them. If I see topical questions that speak to the slide that I'm reviewing, I'll go ahead and answer them throughout the presentation. But Maddy will open it up at the end of my presentation for questions that we received before and during this webinar that were unanswered. So thank you for joining me, and let's get started. Oh, maybe. There we go. My name is Emily Purdon, and I'm the Financial Planning and Process Coach at XY Planning Network. I joined the Advisor Success Team in June after working as a financial planner at a large fee-only RIA in Northern Virginia. I expect to earn my master's in advanced financial planning from Kansas State next week I also completed KSU's Financial Therapy Graduate Certificate Program, Wharton's Executive Education Program in Client Psychology, and the FPA Residency Program. As a CFP and EA, I coach XYPN members as they start, run, and grow their businesses. I coach in group and private formats and lead weekly educational webinars for members in different phases of the firm journey. When I'm not coaching or engaging with members, I spend time creating resources, building out self-guided courses, and writing blogs. Okay, so we're gonna jump into the overview. My slide deck is up, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop my video, switching over to content. I'll come back on for the AMA Q&A portion at the very end of today's webinar. So let's see. Okay, it looks like we have 142 participants with us today, which is awesome. When it comes to growing your financial planning firm, creating a repeatable, scalable financial planning process is a key first step. I will discuss the core tenets of the XYPN Financial Planning Process and help you outline your own financial planning process for your firm, from client onboarding all the way through plan delivery. Then we will move on to a tip related to developing a core reporting package to help you build your process with the right balance of customization and scalability. We will then review templated emails and meeting agendas to further help you communicate your process. The XYPN Financial Planning Process is intended to help members build, illustrate, and communicate their service model through access to resources, trainings, and coaching conversations. We help our members establish a client-centric financial planning process. This really represents the industry shift away from investment management to ongoing advice-based relationships. We also help members refine how they communicate value beyond an initial financial plan. And we show members how to adapt resources for their ideal clients and provide access to self-guided courses that supplement their live learning. In order to build a profitable business solely on financial planning fees, we help members calculate and set fees to better serve their ideal client, regardless of net worth. And lastly, we help members establish boundaries, communicate expectations, and manage their calendars so that they can spend more time engaging with existing clients and prospects. An initial planning process timeline fills a unique need in your firm. It will help you discover and determine what a client experiences in the first 12 weeks with you. So a question for all of you on the call today. Do you have your initial process outlined? A lot of our members try out some onboarding methods and techniques, and through trial and error will eventually build systems and processes that work for them. I would encourage you to think about your timeline while you are evaluating your fees and setting up your service model. If you are beyond these early stages, it's not too late. So write down the process that your last few clients experienced and look for opportunities to refine and improve it. The first thing I want you to consider is how long your initial process is going to be. Like I said earlier, most members fall between 10 to 12 weeks, although based on your service model, you may wish to have a longer or shorter process time. Once you've determined that, how many meetings do you want to hold? If you want a high-touch, client-centric financial planning process, you may hold 5 or 6 meetings over the course of 3 months. There is no right or wrong answer here. If you are unsure where to begin, use the template on the next slide and make some adjustments after working through it a few times. Then I want you to think about how much time should pass between each meeting. This is a really easy thing to forget. Setting standards and determining best practices will help you clarify why your process is the way it is. So an example, we have about 2 weeks between these meetings, so I can work on preparing paperwork and you can link some of your accounts. Goes a long way with a prospect who wouldn't know what to expect otherwise. Then setting expectations around meeting length is really important. If you are planning on a 20-minute qualifying call, but the prospect is expecting a 90-minute meeting, there's some obvious misalignment. And if your meeting is running a little bit long, which happens to all of us, you have the option to slow it down and refer to the next meeting that is scheduled where you will continue your conversation. And lastly, clearly describe each meeting and what you hope to accomplish. A get organized meeting or some other industry jargon might not mean anything to your prospect or client. Just write a sentence or two to clarify the purpose of each meeting. So when we take a look at the slides, those are the 5 items I want you to do. Evaluate total process time, the quantity and names of your meetings, the time between each meeting, the length of each meeting, and a sentence or two describing them. Good time to screenshot or take some notes on that. So this is the screenshot of the planning process timeline template. That's a mouthful. This timeline is appropriate for both project offerings and ongoing relationships in the form of retainer or AUM. As a reminder, the process as I've built it highlights the first 10 to 12 weeks at your firm. So the key points, you know them. Establishing a process time, I just told you that's 10 to 12 weeks. So let's look at each of these meetings individually so you understand what I mean by my process timeline and you're able to take that information and build your own. Let's start with the prospect meeting. So on the far left, I'll move from the left to the right. In this meeting, you will assess a mutual fit, build rapport, and share about your firm, as well as the pricing to affirm next steps. You might hold an initial qualifying call in advance of this meeting. Therefore, your prospect meeting might be closer to 60 minutes. As you can see, I have brought attention to the ideal length of each meeting. Our sales coach, BB Webb, has a lot of great resources to facilitate your prospecting conversations, including worksheets to help clarify the purpose of a prospect meeting, to help envision the outcome you desire, and to determine key questions to ask your prospect so you learn about who they are and what their goals and challenges are. Through effective questions, you'll be able to effectively share your offering and value. The next meeting is the discovery meeting. The intention of a discovery meeting is to take a deeper dive into learning how you can best serve your prospect, match your services through stories of how you've helped others, and ultimately close your prospect. Specifically, focusing on prospect concerns, goals, and desires to understand their unique needs and objectives. We provide agendas to help you work through your ideal meeting flow, from meeting expectations, asking for the close, and even next steps. This meeting typically runs about 60 minutes. Those 2 meetings, like I said, our sales coach BB does a lot of training around, lead to prospect, prospect to close, how to get to know your prospect better. So those 2, in a way, are part of your sales process or sales flow. The next meeting is the get organized meeting. So this is where I come in and a lot of my training and my resources come in as well. We will walk through a sample meeting agenda and an email in our time today. This is a slightly longer meeting. I have 90 minutes written down here. And in general, I do recommend that you keep your meetings to under 90 minutes. Any longer, and you will likely lose the client's attention and motivation. In this meeting, you will collect necessary information and help your clients sort through their financial lives. A get organized meeting replaces a traditional data gathering meeting and, overwhelming questionnaires. Michael Kitces first wrote about this in 2016, and many of our members have since implemented this client-centric meeting into their timeline. If you missed the blog, it's on Nerd's Eye View, so give it a quick Google. It's a great read, and really, if you're thinking about implementing a get organized meeting or kind of refining your overall planning process, it's a really important thing for you to read. The Explore Possibilities meeting is about 60 minutes and is really the first financial planning meeting. While some advisors jump in with this meeting, it is important to give yourself adequate time to build rapport and trust before beginning the planning process. So you'll analyze and evaluate the client's current financial status using your planning software. You may review their goals and objectives, update their balance sheet, connect or reconnect financial accounts, perform a SWOT analysis, and consider alternative planning scenarios. At the conclusion of this meeting, you will chat through next steps, usually the amount of time it will take you to construct their plan and when the next and potentially final meeting will be. A plan delivery meeting is where you will present their comprehensive financial plan and commit, hopefully, to implementing the top 1 or 2 recommendations. So between the Explore Possibilities meeting and a plan delivery meeting, of course, you will have some work to do on your end. So be it you give yourself 2 weeks, 3 weeks, up to 4 weeks even to construct their financial plan, it's important to figure out how much time, ideally, you think you will need. If you are concluding a project, it would be appropriate to schedule a complimentary check-in call in 6 months. This is one of my favorite tips. It gives you permission to check on the progress and offer your services on an ongoing basis to help them implement the recommendations that they might not have implemented. If you are transitioning to an ongoing planning relationship, on the other hand, it's a great time to introduce them to your service model. I coach on a client service and communications calendar as one technique to do this. It is worth noting that scheduling software like Calendly should be used. You can build out each of these meetings as well as your ongoing quarterly meetings as separate appointments. A lot of our members have both virtual and in person. So assuming in-person meetings pick up again soon, you might have duplicates. You would copy over the time and description for each meeting and provide the relevant link to your clients. This allows you to control which days you take meetings and helps you set expectations. If you need to schedule an appointment outside of your preferred hours, the clients will need to request it, and it's ultimately your choice if you'd like to take that meeting. These boundaries are essential. What I coach on a lot is I want you to think about, it's totally aspirational. It's your ideal client experience, your ideal experience as a planner. If you don't want to take meetings on a Friday, don't take meetings on a Friday. If you're working at this part-time, 20 hours a week, because you have a side hustle or you have a family, make sure that's reflected in your Calendly. If you want to make exceptions, that's great and that's okay, and we're all fine with that. But I'd rather have you make an exception once a month than every single time someone goes to schedule a meeting with you. The good news is that this timeline corresponds to the XYPN workflow series. With marketing, sales, and planning workflows available in Wealthbox, you don't need to recreate the wheel. This is meant to be an 80% solution so that you can spend time iterating and refining it as you progress through the member journey. Members also have access, so these, workflows live in Wealthbox, obviously, so you can focus on onboarding new clients efficiently and serving existing clients, but we also have non-Wealthbox users. So our workflows are available in PDF guides that you can easily use to structure our workflow series into other CRMs. I see a quick question in the Q&A box. I'm interested in hearing if there would be recommended planning software. Right Capital is our recommending planning software that is in the tech stack. So many of our members are using that. We do perform an annual technology benchmarking survey that provides us insight into other solutions. And the second most popular across membership is eMoney. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, XYPN member Russ Ford, founder of Wayfinder Financial, branded his process using words like cast, row, maneuver. This is a great way to set yourself apart from other planners and establish a brand. I connected with Russ to understand more about what went into adapting the XYPN planning process timeline. Here's a screenshot of his planning process. And Russ also shared some thoughts, which I will actually read from his perspective. So 4 items here. The first, I was already feeling completely crazy with a handful of clients. I knew I couldn't survive and grow while recreating the wheel for every client. You can only get really good at customizing a client experience if you have a repeatable and efficient blueprint you're using as the base. When thinking through how to create my repeatable processes, what I noticed is that everyone coming to me had a life or money issue, which they wanted to make sure was addressed prior to anything else in the planning process. That looked different for everybody, which meant non-repeatable processes up to that point. And it also meant that their minds were preoccupied if I didn't address those items before moving on. So I tried to balance the best of both worlds into a repeatable process, first addressing the top of mind client issues, and then circling back to deeper long-term planning conversations that aren't as tangible. Let's talk through his process at a high level. I think he did a phenomenal job of this, and I'll actually be chatting with him during my session at XYPN Live in October. So you can see that Russ chose to break out his process into phase 1, find your way, and phase 2, navigate your journey. His initial process, or phase 1, is 6 months. So where I was coaching on 3 months or 12 weeks, he decided to figure out his process was about 6 months, and the second phase is ongoing service. What he came up with is represented by his planning timeline visual. I have a few notes on kind of each session that I'll quickly review to get you familiar with how he laid this out. The kickoff session serves as a deep conversation where he reviews the client's financial picture based on a precise FP questionnaire. He asks clarifying questions, and they mutually decide on some of the top of mind priorities, or maneuvers as he calls them, that they want to cover in the next few meetings. Then, over the next few months, they have maneuver sessions addressing all of those priorities. After that, the client feels like they've got through, cut through a lot of the noise, and they've made some tangible changes that feel really good to them. It gives Russ license to say, let's take a step back and cast a bigger vision for your journey. At the end of the first 6 months is what Russ calls the cast sessions. Russ has his clients work on Kinder's 3 questions. They discuss answers, review where they've come from, and what they've accomplished on their journey thus far. He gets feedback from them, and they cast a bigger vision for the future. The clients now feel really good about moving into the second phase, which involves quarterly row sessions and a service calendar where Russ is constantly checking on progress. This visual, as well as his comments, are available on my February blog post. I'll make sure to link that over at the end of today's presentation. If otherwise, maybe Kelly or Maddy, you could link it over for me. The February blog that I recently wrote with Russ and actually another member, Brent Hoskins, as well. I don't see any questions in Q&A, so I'll keep on going. So that's all I had on the timeline. I love coaching on that. Many, if not all, of my private coaching clients have worked through that. Lots of examples on XYPN member websites that you can start to look at. So let's go ahead and switch gears to core reporting and then on to templated emails and agendas over the next 5 slides. Establishing a core reporting package goes hand in hand with building a scalable service model. I want you to think about a standard set of reports that you can rely on meeting after meeting to build consistency and increase efficiency. This is a pain point I hear about in many of my coaching calls. Some members rely heavily on planning software reports to the tune of 100 pages, and others are building their own Excel spreadsheets to do their analysis. I have concerns with both of those approaches, specifically the overall efficiency of the meeting prep process. There are a few questions that I want you to reflect on in our time today. So I'm going to ask a question, pause for a few seconds for you to think about it, maybe take a quick note or two. Obviously, this is not an interactive webinar, so let's just work through these. There's 4 of them. Do you currently rely on, or plan on relying, if you haven't gotten started yet, on a set of standard reports for your meetings? Do you copy and paste from multiple software solutions? How much editing are you doing to make it client-friendly or just to meet your needs? How many pages and reports are you showing your clients? I used to fall victim to printing out e-money reports, editing them in Word, adding screenshots from other programs in an effort to show the clients that we were diligent and prepared. I have been there. So, why are you spending so much time building and customizing reports? This is a really key question. Is it because you think it's necessary, or is it because a client has asked and needs you to edit your reporting package? I want you to think about your highest and best use as a business owner and a financial planner. If you have a team, I hope that you're delegating meeting prep. If you're currently doing most or all of the preparation yourself, this is a great area of your process to focus on efficiency and scalability. I'm going to take a quick look at the Q&A, so bear with me. Oh, good. So the second question, which reports can you recommend from eMoney? My process is not scalable on the report side. So this infographic, or just kind of quick training visual, is exactly what I would recommend for both actually eMoney and Rate Capital. So I'm going to go ahead and hit done on that question. If you are new to financial planning or trying to streamline your client deliverables, this is a really good place to start. For example, if every quarter you review the same reporting package, and this is an example, a meeting agenda, a balance sheet, a 5-year cash flow, and an asset allocation chart, your clients will learn how to read and understand the reports. There is some expectation when meeting with a planner that you will discuss assets, spending, and investments. However, a lot of us lead with financial planning, which means you may need to supplement these core reports with other reports that you may need. If you are covering insurance planning, it would be appropriate to have an educational one-pager and maybe even an analysis prepared. But the concept is you're not doing that every single time. When you use a service calendar, you're able to do batch planning, and you're really maybe only running an insurance analysis once every year. This is especially relevant for our members that are implementing the monthly retainer model, because the benefits of standardized reports are compounded over time. Your financial planning process will become more efficient and scalable when you leverage this concept. Okay, templated emails should be drafted by compiling emails that you have sent recently to leads, prospects, and clients. You likely already have the pieces that you need to complete this task. I'm currently working with a member actually in a private coaching program that shared 10 recent emails that he has sent to prospects and clients. He dropped them in a Google Doc, and I spent some time editing, rearranging, and building a flow so he knows which emails to send in what order and why. You are able to build in versions within an email template. For example, your first email to a lead could have a few variations based on how that lead found you. So if they found you from your website, you might start that email with, "Thank you for scheduling an introductory call with me." If they came from a referral, something along the lines of, "I appreciate the referral from Maddy, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you soon." And similarly, if a prospect comes to you from the Find an Advisor portal or other similar professional page, you would have a version for that as well. My templates are created to match the meeting cadence in the planning process timeline. You should aim to do the same with your emails. Your emails need to be clear, transparent, and intentional. My templates are really meant to copy, paste, and customize. So whether you're just getting started or you're trying to refine this, hopefully this slide is helpful for you. I presented today's content in the order in which I think you should approach systemizing your planning work. If you start with templating emails, how will you know which meeting the email actually corresponds to? This is a Get Organized meeting email. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and read it briefly and then move on, I think, to the agenda conversation. So we made a lot of great progress during our discovery meeting last week. Our next meeting, the Get Organized meeting, is about 90 minutes and can be scheduled here. I would love to get this on the calendar in the next 2 weeks if your schedule allows. I attached a draft agenda for your review and consideration. If you have any changes or are hoping to cover something else, I will revise it before our meeting. I also attached a visual for how I typically run these meetings and the various components that we will cover. This might look familiar because we talked about it during our first meeting last month. If you have some time before we meet, you may prepare a list of usernames and passwords for your financial accounts. I set aside time for us to work through this together during our meeting if you get stuck. Please remember to bring your financial documents to our meeting so we can get them scanned and stored securely in your Rate Capital vault. What I want to point out here, I think maybe 7 or 8 things. I reviewed the prior meeting. I discussed the meeting length. I provided a scheduling link. I outlined the desired meeting date. I attached a draft agenda. I provided a visual. I reviewed action items and homework, and I added any relevant reminders. And look how short that email is. When I review email templates or just previous emails that have been sent, they are so long and detailed. And ultimately, we need to think, is a client or a prospect really reading through this? Or do I need to do a better job streamlining the things that I want them to know? This is an example of a get organized meeting agenda. So moving from the email to the actual agenda that hypothetically I attached in that email. I do want to draw your attention to the Roman numerals. Try to break out your meetings into bite-sized pieces. Meeting agendas allow you to set meeting expectations, be transparent, hopefully keep to meeting time, and communicate next steps. While there are many benefits of meeting agendas, some planners find that they're too restrictive and they prevent the natural flow of conversation. It's completely personal preference. Consider what your ideal client would expect and deliver accordingly. Instead of emailing your client and providing a copy of the agenda, I know some members prepare internal facing agendas to help keep them to time and remind them of the topics to cover. This is a great alternative if you are worried about a meeting agenda potentially overwhelming or distracting your client. Either way, I always like wrapping up my presentations. Please remember, tell your clients what you will tell them in an email, then tell them during the meeting, and then tell your clients what you just told them in a follow-up email. I think this is my last slide. So overall, the XYPN planning process was created to help you build a consistent client experience. Consistency is linked to trust, plan implementation, and referrals, and is often the subject of many conference presentations. Please spend some time with your fee structure before you spend time thinking about today's content. You build planning processes around your ideal client and fees. When you're ready to think about building or refining your planning process, please focus on your process timeline first and then transition to templated emails and agendas. The XY community is wonderful in that it provides you with people that you can rely on. Members of our network are each other's biggest cheerleaders, sounding boards, and shoulders to lean on. The Advisor Success Team is an extension of this, and that we are here to help you from the moment you register through the implementing and building phases until you ultimately are ready to scale your firm. So whether you are looking to scale your personal productivity, find business efficiencies, or grow your firm size, our coaches will work with you to help you realize your professional goals. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Maddy to kick off the Q&A.
Awesome, everyone. I hope that you guys all enjoyed that. Emily, thank you so much. Your expertise is fabulous. Lots of questions that I think you hit on generally during this presentation. So if it's redundant, you can just mention that. I'm interested in some of the questions around how to make sure that you keep consistent contact with clients in a really meaningful way. One of our listeners asked the question, what's the most effective way to keep in contact with clients so that they feel loved and not pestered?
Yeah, not pestered is really key. I think sometimes we think, well, we have a quarterly meeting cadence or monthly meeting cadence, and clients want to see us that much, and that's not always the case. So hypothetically, you need to think about your personal preferences and your ideal client's personal preferences. And so what that could look like, one of my favorite things to coach on in a service calendar, you have these items, these kind of modules or topics you want to talk about. You can send out a monthly email, could kind of look like a firm newsletter, but it's educational. So for example, maybe your May email goes to all your clients. Hey, it's a great time to check your credit score. Here's how you pull your credit report. Here is a 3-minute video of me talking through an example credit report. And here's a 15-minute Calendly link if you find anything of concern that you want to talk about. What that does when you send it, it's not an individual touch, but it's a meaningful touch. They see your face, they get access to your calendar, and they will feel loved. Now, if they feel like they're being pestered, guess what? They won't reach out. They won't schedule this time. Maybe they won't look at the credit report. But I think it's a good way to cover your bases.
Great. Someone asked, I want to understand how billing for investment management is done from custodians in a fee-only world.
Sure. So billing from, yeah, I think most of the members that I talk to, a lot of them are do-it-yourselfers. Some of them use a TAMP. So I will just make a quick note about fees. If you're using a TAMP, 25, 30 bips, make sure that your fee is adequately, you have to keep in mind it's being eaten into. So as far as most often, I think AUM is still quarterly billing done in arrears usually. A lot of people will wrap a planning fee. So planning and AUM, it's done as one. It's a comprehensive wealth planning or wealth management offering. I don't know if that touches enough on that question, but that would be my answer.
Awesome. Great.
And then also,
go ahead.
So sorry, I'm just gonna flip back. There's some people asking about the email template slide, so I'm just gonna go between slides so they can take screenshots and do what they need to do.
Good, awesome. And I love some of these questions aren't totally on topic, but you're such an expert that I think it's worth asking you. What type of fee structure do you think will be the preferred method in the future if you had a crystal ball, Emily?
Okay, so I don't know how to say this in a really easy way, but if I were an advisor, this is how I would bill, and this is also how I think I'm watching membership shift. And I would say people will still need help with assets. So whether or not AUM truly is the billing structure, the preferred billing structure of the future, there are a lot of questions and concerns around that across the industry. What I think will happen is some sort of delineation between the value of planning and the value of assets. And so what I mean by that is setting some sort of breakpoint. 100,000, 250,000, depending on your client. Anyone under that bills on a monthly retainer. Anyone above that is billed on an AUM. But the idea is you're still providing true comprehensive wealth management and financial planning. So what I mean by that, your service model isn't different. I think the service model of the future will be financial planning, but you're still providing kind of the service based on what your clients need, because ultimately, to a certain asset level, you still need to manage assets. Now, I think it'll probably be flat basis points in the future, 50 bips, 60 bips, something like that. I think we'll see AUM tiering go away, but something sort of like that is kind of how I imagine it going.
Great, awesome insight. Okay, this is a good one. Who do you recommend for initial RIA setup and ongoing compliance?
Initial RIA setup and ongoing, our compliance department.
That's
I do. Our compliance department absolutely kills it. I think that for initial registration, a lot of members I talk to that maybe did it themselves or went elsewhere, I always hear, I wish I utilized XY's compliance department. So I would say I would recommend them. And then as far as like updates for your ADV when you have a coaching call and I change your fee structure, still our compliance department. I think their rates are super reasonable and they add tremendous value.
Great. What is the most effective way to collect all the boring data? For example, are most clients amenable to doing homework and logging into a website to input the data themselves, or would they prefer to slog through it in person with the advisor?
Yeah, not all clients are going to do their homework. I think if you have certain clients, if you're working with maybe engineers, they're going to log in and do it. But keep in mind, like the idea is you're trying to make their lives easier. That means watching the amount of homework that you give them. If you give them homework, I think it's probably appropriate to extend a meeting to facilitate that. That's what a get organized meeting is. Maddy, let's sit down for 60 minutes. We'll walk through your vault together. We'll upload some documents and we'll get you set up. I know I assign that as homework. If it's not something you want to run with, let's just meet and we'll do it together. So always kind of offering the handhold, but for the DIYers, let them go do it. I mean, there's plenty of people that do want to. And so I think I would go about it that way, is just realize no one wants to fill out a data gathering questionnaire. It is a huge, I think, it's a weaker area in the financial planning process across the industry that if someone had perfected it, everyone would be doing it.
Interesting. Is there a good way to streamline onboarding a client without technology? How do we keep it simple? Without complex technology, they say.
I think you can do onboarding. I don't think you need data gathering questionnaires and all those crazy inputs. I would say use your planning software. Like Right Capital has a really great intro or invitation to allow the client to enter their own data, and it walks them through a really friendly onboarding process. So I would say it uses technology, but you're not integrating with like a precise FP, and you're not leveraging all these different tech solutions to have an onboarding process. I will say the biggest thing, internal onboarding. You need an internal onboarding process, a workflow or something like that. Doesn't matter if the client, they don't need to see it, but you need to know what you need and when for that onboarding process to really be efficient.
Great. My first client wants to stay with Schwab once my RIA is approved by New York State. Will we be able to withdraw AUM fees automatically, quarterly in arrears?
Okay, so they want to stay with Schwab. Would you be, I guess I would have to know a little bit more if they'd be the investment advisor kind of on that account. I will say members sometimes do an AUA, and assets under advisement fee structure that allows their client to stay with a Schwab or a Vanguard because maybe they custodian with TD. So I would say if you feel like you're going to run into, maybe it's usually a high net worth client issue where they're at a prior custodian, they have, maybe good low trading and just kind of good funds. Keep in mind you can always do an AUA fee, but I think I would need a little more information on that.
Okay, awesome, great. Let's look back at some of the questions that were submitted before the call. Good. What's the most effective method for data gathering? So many questions about data gathering. Let's change this a bit. There was we'll actually come back to that. What do you think the individual advisor's greatest challenges moving forward?
I think cutting out the noise, because I think what'll happen, and it happens in our community all the time, maybe you're in a study group and all of these people are talking about running and building an enterprise practice, and you're over here like, I want to build a solo practice and I want 30 clients, but everyone else wants 75. And so I would just say, I think the biggest challenge is do what you want to do. You don't need to do what other members are doing. You don't need to do what other advisors are doing. If you want to run half tax practice, half fee only RIA, half coffee shop, half fee only RIA, do what you want to do. So I think the biggest challenge is truly, it's information overload. It's paralysis by analysis. So those are the two things you're going to have to check the most as you go through your journey.
Very good advice, Emily. Can a person start as a financial coach and transition to a financial advisor successfully?
Oh, absolutely. I think the skills of a financial coach are essential too. I think being an impactful advisor. I know a lot of members that, are financial coaches that have a financial coach offering. So I would say, don't try to force a certain fee structure. If you're interested in providing financial coaching, you can always consider alternative fee arrangements to make that happen. So maybe you want a workshop, maybe you want an AMA where every hour you pop on and clients can come in and consult with you. So just keep in mind, you can still keep your financial coaching skill set and your financial coaching offerings while also having a planning firm. So yeah, absolutely. You can transition if you want to transition fully into planner, obviously pursuing your CFP and really truly immersing yourself in that content.
Great. The only caveat that we want to share with you about financial coaching is that obviously you cannot give any investment advice if you do not have an RIA. So you do want to be particularly careful about the rules and regulations around that. We often encourage folks that if you're going to do financial coaching, that you at least have an RIA to protect yourself. Do you agree, Emily?
Absolutely. And the flip side's true. If you're a marriage and family therapist, or you're kind of in the field of psychology and you get into money issues and money disorders, realizing, referring out and vice versa, right? I think the referral system for people in the world of financial therapy, financial, disorders and behaviors, like that's a really needed area, I think, across industry. So just keep in mind, know your competency and also know your regulations and your kind of limitations there.
Great. How do you create an action plan that stays top of mind for clients? And this is kind of tied into some other questions about how do you remind clients to continue the process?
Can you repeat that first sentence?
How do we create an action plan that stays top of mind for clients?
Yeah, so it's a combination of your CRM and your planning software. So when you think about it, let's say Maddy and I are working together and I'm her advisor. I give her 3 pieces of homework. Those homework items should go on Right Capital or eMoney. her portal, her vault, where she logs in. It will remind her gently to get to her homework items. And then I separately track my items as well as Maddy's items in my CRM. And so the idea there is you know what's going on with yourself and with your client, and you can also check in on progress. I think planning software is a great way to do that. Also, keeping in mind, you're gonna run into clients that don't keep up on homework, that are really hard to get a hold of, that you're lucky if you can meet with them once a year. And so that's when you just have to sit back and reflect, where is the disconnect? They might be having fear, anxiety, stress issues around implementation. So just because they're ignoring you, sometimes it's not because they're busy, it's because they're paralyzed by whatever that cause factor is. So just keep in mind, it could just be worth a call, in this case, a call to Maddy saying, hey, Maddy, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. I know it's crazy. I just wanted to check in on you and see how you were feeling, see how you're doing. Drop the planning homework, drop the items, and just engage with your client.
Love that. Great advice. This ties in well. How do you address a client's indecisiveness? Do you suggest we postpone for 3, 6, 12 months and tweak the plan during the pre-scheduled update, or put it on hold? I'm afraid inactivity on the plan design will result in a dropped engagement. I also don't want to spend my time tracking and sending pesky reminders. Ideas from practical experience?
Really good question. It's going to be client dependent, because sometimes if you just touch base with them again in 3, 6, 9 months, they're going to be ready. So if there was like a life factor preventing them from engaging, like that might circle back naturally and you're back on your path. The flip side of that is usually there's a misalignment between your fees and the value that they're deriving. So if they're thinking about pausing, or maybe you're thinking about offering them a kind of a pause subscription or a dropped engagement, keep in mind it usually comes back to they're just not understanding. Now, you're probably doing a lot. You're probably doing everything in your power to be a good planner for them. You just need to communicate that differently. So I would keep in mind a service calendar or something that shows them what you're working on behind the scenes. Kitsis calls that shadow work. You really need to illustrate your shadow work in order to actually communicate your value.
Will you explain a little bit more about shadow work?
Yeah, so shadow work is like that back office work. So if I'm over here doing education planning analysis because I know you have a kiddo that's headed for college soon, but I never tell you I'm working on it, or I never tell you that I'm going to present it at our next meeting. Do you really want to meet in our next meeting if you don't know what's going on or what we're talking about? And so that's kind of what I mean.
I love that. I hadn't heard that concept before. For niche industries, such as special needs planning, do you see these planners doing things differently due to the complexity and individuality of the client's needs? I love this question.
When they say special needs planning, do they mean truly special needs planning, or special, just like various niches in general?
Various niches in general.
Okay.
But I suspect we do have a large group of folks that are focused on supporting families with special needs children and planning. So I think it's more that when you have a real niche, does the planning process change?
Yes. So when you have a niche, what it allows you to do is it allows you to identify obviously your marketing efforts, right? So like the why behind what you do. But it also allows you to convey your sales process in a more genuine way. I work with women professionals because I am a woman professional, whatever the case is. So then it helps you with marketing, it helps you with sales. And then when it comes to planning and processes, it helps you build the service model where your expertise is. So there's like an equation I chat about sometimes, which is what clients value. So clients, parentheses, value, plus you as a planner, parentheses, expertise. So value and expertise leads to your service model.
Man, Emily, you're good. All right. How often do you recommend updating the client's plan and deliverables / core reporting? Quarterly for each meeting, or keeping track of changes and updating annually, but using the quarterly meetings to address most pressing issues and pivoting as needed?
Personal preference, but also depends on what state you're in. So if you are charging monthly, you have a monthly arrangement, there should be some sort of monthly touch point. Be it a true plan, comprehensive plan update, probably not. In general, our members from benchmarking data do quarterly cadence meetings. So I think core reports come up quarterly, and then there's just minor updates that happen kind of throughout as life happens, because you're not going to get your clients on a perfect calendar.
We had a couple people on today's call ask about your preferred CRM, and I would love for you to chat a little bit about what you've done with our preferred CRM.
For sure. So previously, when I was a planner, I used Juncture and I used Salesforce. And then when coming to XY, obviously, we use Wealthbox. And I am on phone calls with Steve, the head of product at Wealthbox, every 2 weeks, kind of just chatting through what's in the pipeline, feedback that I'm hearing. So really good conversations with Wealthbox. I appreciate their partnership. I think they listen. I think they care a lot. They do webinars with us. They're a phenomenal resource. If you are building, and our tech study shows this as well, if you are building a solo practice, Wealthbox truly is the way to go. Our advisors love it. As your revenue, so your recurring revenue hits 500K and you start to think about enterprise practices and kind of further scaling, there is a transition away from Wealthbox to other CRMs. But the majority of our members who are in the implementing phase, building phase, really find a lot of comfort in Wealthbox. I would say, once again, it's the noise. So you might hear a firm, a member firm, or just, friend, whatever, COI, who uses something like Salesforce or uses something a bit more robust, but ask yourself, is it worth the money? Because it really comes down to that. Is it worth the money? And is it worth the complexity? Do you need that? Or is it just like a shiny thing that you think would be cool and you think would help you? So as far as really thinking through that, it truly is personal preference, but for financial planners, Wealthbox is the answer.
Great. What questions are you asking in the initial phone call versus the discovery meeting? How do you keep from making that initial call an accidental discovery meeting?
So that can happen sometimes. So, if someone calls you and they have a pain point, I just got laid off, and they want to talk about it. Are you really going to be able to keep that to 15 minutes, 30 minutes? I don't know. I don't think so. So I would say just allowing yourself a little flexibility. If you feel like the conversation is naturally going somewhere and will lead to the close of that prospect, go for it. If you feel like they're a little bit unsure, they need to review your pricing, end it and say, hey, we have this other meeting. It's, a 60-minute prospect meeting. Why don't I send you some information and we can circle back? Great.
Are your coaching sessions exclusive to XYPN members? And what's the pricing?
They are exclusive. So I do there's a lot of free ways to engage with me. So webinars and speaking engagements and, email messages in the forums, things like that. I have 2 private coaching programs. One is an hourly rate, a lot like what you all do. And then the other is a 3-month intensive coaching program where most of my coaching time is spent. 6 calls, homework, the whole thing. And I just become your teammate for 3 months.
Love it. How do you handle clients who seem, this is a great question. Any advice on how to best track exactly where in the financial planning process are and what data we have and what data is still missing?
So are they talking about the planning process timeline or like the firm journey?
I read it as the financial planning process.
Okay,
so 25 different things you need. How do we know quickly what's missing?
Good question. The data gathering informally happens during your qualifying call, your prospect meeting, your discovery meeting. I would strongly encourage you, a lot of research shows that discovery meeting is qualitative. Save your quantitative stuff until the next meeting. The discovery meeting is really just a time for you to connect with the client, hear them out, learn about them. And so I would say you might still have holes as far as what you need, but the idea of being able to spread it out, have qualitative, have quantitative, have planned delivery or design meetings allows you to fill in those gaps naturally without it, really overwhelming the client. I think all planners will at some point send an email saying, hey, Maddy, you said you had a 401k. Like, I don't have that statement. So unfortunately those things will always happen, but I prefer using a document checklist that you throw in the client's vault. You can send in an email. They can refer back to it. Whether or not they refer back to it 100% accurately, at least you can probably get 80% of the way there.
Great. Do you like bullet points in emails for key to-dos?
Yes, I can't tell you how many emails I read that I'm like, why is this a novel? I think we're so analytical as planners, and I think we want to show and demonstrate value just at such a high rate that we just data dump. And so I would say if you feel like you're writing more than 2 paragraphs, pick up the phone and call your client or have a quick, like, you know, Zoom chat for 15 minutes. I want to caution you against feeling like you need to write everything down. I know we do it because we save it to our CRM. We can reference it and be like, I told Maddy this, and that's great. But we want it to be clear and easy for our clients. That's why we're here. We're here to educate them. We're here to help them. We're here to be an accountability partner. And are super long emails really always necessary? Probably not.
Great. Do you recommend using tools like Zapier to fully automate certain emails? For example, to prospects after scheduling an initial phone call?
Yeah, so Zapier in general, which we have a new partnership coming out in mid-May, which is awesome. We love Zapier. We have a industry consultant who's helping us kind of roll out templates and zaps and things like that. If you're curious about Zapier, I think it's zapier.com/integrations, and you can type in your current tech and it'll tell you, well, you're a Wealthbox user. Here are the 10 most popular zaps on how people use Wealthbox, Zapier kind of integrations. So I think that's a great kind of thing to play around with. I have fun doing that. As far as actually emailing and email campaigns, I know a lot of our members use MailChimp. I think once again comes back to, is it in the budget? Does it make sense for you? How much email marketing campaign type stuff are you really doing? Email automation. So I would say check out Zapier, check out MailChimp, and also ask yourself, do you really need that? Do you have 3 clients and you can just email your clients because you don't truly need to kind of eat into your budget at this point?
Great advice. Folks, we're getting close to the end of the hour, if you can believe it. If you've got an additional question or two, please drop it in. I think we can get to just a few more. Emily, do you have examples of tiered services on billing based on AUM in conjunction with monthly subscription?
Yes, I could talk about fees all day. So in conjunction, there's really 2 ways, the way that I outlined earlier with the breakpoint. So anything above that's usually flat. As far as tiered in conjunction, I usually recommend it's just an AUM floater. Your planning fee sits here. So what happens if Maddy comes to me and only wants AUM? I have an AUM. If she comes to me and only wants planning, I have planning. If she wants both, I double fee. What happens with that? And I caution members against layering fees like that, because what'll happen is if you're just doing one or the other, is it really going to be enough recurring revenue per household? And if it is enough, you're probably double feeing them at too high of a rate. And so then it's like, will you really get the kind of client you want? So it comes back to, what's the value you want to provide and how do you ultimately want to bill? I always say this, which I feel like I get made fun of for, but it doesn't really matter how you're billing. What matters is what services you're providing, who your ideal client is, and then you back into how to bill. The bill doesn't come first. It's who you're serving and how you're serving them. And then we can talk about strategies on doing that. So I think I would ask yourself, do I provide a lot of value in assets under management? Is that my skill set? If so, you're going to do a traditional 100 bip tier down to 50 bips, you know, all the way up to something like 5 million. That's traditional fee only RIA world. I feel like that answers the question, but I also feel like I could talk about that for a long time.
We may have to have another webinar with you, Emily. Wonderful. Okay, let's ask the last question. Do most advisors go over ADVs in person and collect fees in person? When is this done? In the discovery meeting or virtually?
Well, advice pay rocks. So a lot of our members, you know, I'm only privy to the conversations I have. I'm not obviously currently an advisor, but I think how it's done is when the client agrees to work with you, there's an engagement that's sent out, and usually an advice pay bill. That advice pay bill you can either pay quarterly or monthly. Like I think members usually give clients a choice. I don't know about in person. I know you have to provide obviously your ADV, your privacy policy, all that kind of stuff. In-person review, it takes a really special client that wants to go through that. So you're always welcome to offer. And if someone takes you up on it, just realize you're going to spend some time talking about your ADV. But I wouldn't say you need to set aside time to do so.
Great advice. All right, folks, we're pressing up against the hour. I do want to remind you that we have a survey here down at the bottom of our chat. I would love, love, love for you to fill that out. Let us know if this is the kind of content you want, how awesome Emily was, whether this time frame works for you, what other topics you may want to hear in the future. We are kind of a member-driven network. We always have been. We are always looking at survey responses and taking them seriously. And then, of course, don't forget to mark your calendar for next month's webinar. This is going to be about how to create a launch marketing plan for your RIA with Carolyn Daly-Mole, our marketing coach. Thank you so much, Emily. Your expertise is just so apparent, and I really think that this was a valuable call for all of our listeners. So anyone, if you've got more questions, please come back to these webinars. If you become an XYPN member, you can have access to Emily in the forums and things like that. But for now, we will continually be bringing her expertise outward, outside the membership as much as we can. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great, safe, beautiful, and happy Wednesday. We'll see you back next month.